Okay, I'll just let the members of the public leave. Yeah. Good afternoon and welcome to the public. Before I do anything else, I'd like us to stand in a minute's silence to honour Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. I would now pass over to Leader, who's going to speak with regards to the sad passing of Her Majesty the Queen.
Thank you very much, Chairman. This has been a momentous week for all of us, a momentous week of sadness, just for the world and for the nation and for our county. Over the past 10 days, I've attended, as many of you have, a great number of services of thanksgiving for Her Majesty's life, her example, and her work. These have included small outside services, like the one in Longhorsley, to much larger services at Hexham Abbey. And they've included others, like the one in Rothbury, which was largely organised by Councillor Bridget, who kindly invited us, and to whom I thank him again for a very good service then. I'd like to say thank you formally to the Lieutenancy, to the High Sheriff, to the police, to parish and town councils, to churches, and to yourselves for having played a part in your areas and within the county. I'd also like to say particular thanks to David Sanderson, no relative, a Morpethian, who is a Grenadier Guard, and he was one of the pallbearers of Her Majesty's coffin. Thank you very much to our civic head and deputy, who attended so many services and played their part very well. And to our staff, who, not just over this last fortnight, but well before then, preparing the project plan for London Bridge and all the work that went into that. And to those I saw at West Hertford on the first night, in the control room, and all the work that they did. To all the organisation carried out by our staff, and to our frontline staff who did so much work around crowd control, street closures, placing of cones, and so on, all with exactly the same thought and commitment to helping in every way they could. But I have to thank Tracy, Susan, and Jackie particularly, and I know you would all want me to do that, for the amount of work that they did in their role over this last fortnight, which was exemplary and very fine, and thank you very much, all of you, for doing that. As we move forward, we look forward to launching the public consultation, which I think is online today, where we are asking our residents for their ideas around a memorial or memorials, either in one place or across the county, that will fittingly acknowledge our love for Her late Majesty. And I look forward to seeing what those are, and I will involve you all when we get the ideas and we will move forward with something as soon as we can. In the meantime, we as a county and as a county council, and you as county councillors, have done Her Majesty proud. So all I can say is thank you to everyone who's played their part.
Thank you. A letter of condolence will be sent from the council in the normal procedural manner. So thanks for everyone involved with that as well. I would like to remind you all that this meeting is live on the council's YouTube channel. Before we move into this afternoon's proceedings, there are a few housekeeping matters that I'd like to bring to members' attention again. One, I'd like to remind members and officers to stand when they are speaking in the chamber. Can I also please remind members that any speeches must be limited to 6 minutes and directed to the item or question under discussion. Please may I remind members, officers including press and public that are in attendance today that all mobile phones must be placed in silent mode and no calls should be made or received in the chamber during the meeting. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies?
Apologies from Councillor
Bridget Dunn and Wallace. I can add to that Councillor Angie Scott, Councillor Bourne, Councillor Paul Esel-Shelvin, Councillor Dunbar, Councillor Darwin, Councillor Dodd, Councillor Carr. Richard?
And Councillor Jackson, Chair.
Councillor Dickinson.
Councillor Dickinson, thank you. I didn't want to presume.
Councillor Wallace.
Yeah, we've got Councillor Wallace, thank you.
Just to say that Councillor Oliver's broken down. It'll be late anywhere between half an hour and an hour.
His feet was broken down.
Yeah, he...
It might be him as well.
Yes, okay. Okay, thank you. I move to the next item on the agenda, which is minutes of the following meeting. Point A, Wednesday the 6th of July, page 11 to 30. And point B, Wednesday the 27th of July, an extraordinary meeting, page 31 to 40. And that's proposed by Glenn Sanderson and seconded by Gordon Stewart. All in favour? Oh, Councillor Watson, you have your hand up.
I'm just missing off the attendance for the meeting on the 6th of July.
Okay, can we thank you for bringing that to attention. Councillor Hardy, do you have your hand up? Okay. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Our next agenda item is disclosure of members' interest. Does any member have any interest to declare that they have not already declared to the monitoring officer before this meeting? Yes, Councillor Swinbank.
Just on item 7, motion 2, I'm a member of the NIFCA board.
Thank you. I think that applies to a lot of NIFCA members, and I presume we'll all have that declared on your forms which you've recently submitted. But if you haven't, okay, but thank you very much. I'll then go into the next item, which is announcements by the business chair, leader or head of paid service. Well, I'll start that I have 2. Well, there is, firstly, at the next full council meeting, it was discussed today at this morning's Members' Services Working Group about a refresher induction training event, which will be held on the morning of the next full council, probably between 9 and 11, which is the 2nd of November. If you were a new member elected in 2021 or in the 2022 for Councillor Chicken's benefit, this might well be worth attending in terms of it filling in some of the stuff which didn't happen in May 21 due to the COVID restrictions. The second announcement I've got is that we've still got a couple more policy, well, there's a series of policy conferences going forward. We had one recently on affordable housing, and that was very well attended here in the chamber. We have one coming up on inequalities and one on cost of living, is that correct? Yeah, yep. They're the next 2 coming up, and you'll have details of those within your emails, or if you don't know when they are, just email me and I'll get the details to you. I'll then go over to the leader, who's got a couple of announcements.
Thank you very much. First of all, could I just touch on where we are with the Calla report recommendations? If you remember, we decided at Council, following his report, that we would pick up the recommendations in his report, create an action plan around those, and ensure that we dealt with all of those in a speedy and efficient manner. So officers have done brilliantly to make great progress on that. We have formed a members' oversight group, which are the group leaders, and we meet every month to monitor the progress from a member's point of view. And in addition to that, we have, starting very soon, the Challenge Board. Now, let me be quite clear. The Challenge Board are here by our invitation. They are not some sort of draconian measure brought to the council, far from it. They are here at our invitation, and they will help us very much in crossing the T's, dotting the I's, and making sure that we make the progress as quickly as we can to meet all those recommendations, and a lot more as well. So it's going very well, and I think this time in a few months we will be able to tick off all of those points. Secondly, can I touch on devolution? Kind of a wheel has fallen off on devolution because of the change in Prime Minister. So whilst ministers swap with other ministers and pieces of paper and boxes are passed backwards and forwards, we are currently on hold in terms of coming to any sort of decision on next steps. So I would just pay tribute to the other leaders within the LA6 who I've been working very closely with, and we set ourselves a timetable which was on the 5th of September. We would brief our own groups, and then other groups would get a briefing if they wanted it. So all of that has happened, I think, except for one group. Thank you for letting Sarah and Rick explain to you the key points within the presentation. I should also say that that presentation that you've seen is exactly the same that everybody else within all the other groups within the LA6 has seen. So we are doing this entirely in a very structured way, so that there is no feeling that anybody knows more than anyone else or is out of line with anyone else. And I think that's really important. So where we are now is that we are not going to make a decision today at Cabinet to move forward, but hopefully we will know a little bit more about where we are in November, and hopefully we will then be able to move forward on the first step. Please let me be quite clear that once the text is available, which it's not available, once it's available to share, we will share it. And there will be, and Rick, keep me right on this, there is, within the second step, the consultation period. And that means consulting with all members of the council about how you want to play this going forward. For myself, I think it is the right thing for us to be doing. I'm pleased with the way that the councils are working together, the way the chief executives are working together, and the way the leaders are working together, and the fact that this brings, I think, a fresh ray of light for not just our council, but the northeast of England as a whole. So I hope that's helpful, but I'm more than happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
Okay, you've been invited there if you'd want to ask a question. No, good, you're following the rules. Okay, I'll carry on with the agenda then. Item 5 is correspondence. I have no correspondence, so I go over to the next item, which is questions. And the first question is from Councillor Castle to the leader. Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Sanderson, we all recognise that increasing economic pressures will hit the poorest in our community hardest. I commend the recent approach to identifying inequalities and possible solutions, but ask that you inform the Council what measures the Council is able to implement promptly that will support those most in need of help.
Thank you very much. So, we have 3 key priorities in this administration. One is value for money, secondly is encouraging growth, and thirdly is tackling inequalities. Tackling inequalities needs all of us to be involved, and I'm very grateful for the turnout that we hope to have when we take our next policy conference around tackling inequalities early next month. We will also be having a follow-up policy conference on the cost of living, because both are quite integrated. If I may, I'll just read out the response, the officer response. which is that addressing inequalities in Northumberland is an immediate and longer-term challenge. The current economic situation requires the Council to work with others and at pace to support households in need. We continue to encourage anyone looking for support to contact Northumberland Communities Together. And we have got a very proud record of that happening. We have a significant amount of examples where help has been given to people that need it the most. Northumberland Communities Together, Maureen Taylor leading it, helps enormously during the COVID time by channeling specific monies for COVID into the pockets and into the lives of people that need it most. And we continue that work now. And we must continue that work, absolutely. In addition, officers are finalising a poverty and hardship action plan, which goes with the inequalities plan, which we'll take later on in this meeting, including a number of training tools and simple resources for everyone to use to support residents, and for residents, perhaps more importantly, to be able to support themselves. So we will be pulling our business intelligence together to ensure that resources we have available are where we need them the most. And so we need to know exactly those areas and those people that most need our help, and we will then tackle that particular household or households or community and encourage them to help themselves at the same time. So I would say in summary that we do take this very seriously. I am very proud of the work that we've done so far, and I'm very proud that we've got the first ever inequalities plan that's coming to this council later on in this meeting with an action plan that will deliver real benefit to people.
Supplementary, Councillor Castle.
Only, just to be clear, are you recommending that members, should they come across distressing and difficult cases, go to Communities Together in the first instance?
Yes, I am. And I think a quick note to Maureen, she will then cascade that down to the right people. Absolutely, we are on the ground and we are very much front-facing, and we have that role that we can play.
Question 2 is from Councillor Fairless Aiken to Councillor Horncastle.
Since the beginning of the year, Hexham, along with other towns and villages across the county, has seen a distinct rise in instances of antisocial behaviour. From serious acts of vandalism, like the attack on Hexham's bandstand, to the damaging of cars lawfully parked on our streets. Will the administration undertake to work with town and parish councils to facilitate the positioning of CCTV where appropriate and to allow members' small schemes money to be used to purchase equipment? Will the administration also undertake to lobby the PCC to allocate more resources to rural policing and arrange for a meaningful meeting with senior police officers and the LACs to explore how better they can deter and respond to the scourge of antisocial behaviour? I despair of our rural police stations being 9 to 5 rather than round the clock as they used to and should be.
Councillor Horncastle.
Thank you, Councillor. So you've asked a long question there, a lot of points, so you've got quite a long response here. Antisocial behaviour remains of concern, and unfortunately we did see a small increase within the Hexham area. But I'm pleased to be able to advise that those responsible for the damage to the bandstand were apprehended by the police, and the level of antisocial behaviour has reduced in Hexham. At a local level, we will continue to monitor antisocial behaviour through the Hexham Victim Offender Location Meeting, where it is a standing agenda item. I am also pleased to be able to advise that as part of the recent strategic needs assessment that has been undertaken by the Safer Northumberland Partnership, we have identified antisocial behaviour as one of our key priorities, and we are actively working with partners to develop interventions we can take forward to reduce the impact of antisocial behaviour on our communities. We have also recently launched a pilot with the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner and the other 5 Tyne and Wear local authorities to improve understanding and access by residents to the community trigger process. With regard to the CCTV, I would advise as follows. We are exploring the deployment of overt CCTV to monitor parts of the seal. The Council is happy to work with parish and town councils on the siting of CCTV, but under the current arrangements, whilst the County Council has and will deploy mobile CCTV in response to specific concerns, the cost of any fixed public space CCTV would need to be met by the town or parish council. I can confirm that the member's small scheme can be used for the capital purchase of equipment, subject to the cost being greater than the minimum level of £2,000 set out within the scheme. The scheme cannot, however, be used to fund maintenance and revenue costs, which would need to be funded by a different means. I can also advise that I am happy when I next meet with the Police and Crime Commissioner to raise with her the issue of resources to support rural policing. And on that point, was supposed to have a meeting with the Police and Crime Commissioner last Monday, but obviously because of recent events, they were postponed. And we did actually, in communications between me and her, I did actually have a special slot after the panel to discuss rural policing issues with her, which were both me and her have a great deal of concern about. So the next meeting I have, the next time I'm at the Police and Crime panel, I'll be having that extra talk with Kim McGuinness, and hopefully come back with some more information.
Okay, supplementary, Councillor Fairless-Aiken.
Yes, thank you. That's good to hear. And, well, certainly on the apprehension of the people involved, that's great. When I asked about the mobile temporary units to be used at a specific place where the crimes had happened, the Wentworth car park in this case, I was told that the lending library was quite busy and it was hard to even get them to come down in the aftermath of that incident. Could that be looked at? It sounded like they almost didn't have enough to kind of share around, as it were.
Sorry, I've got a bit of an update on the CCTV. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, Councillor Stewart sitting there next to you, we visited a scheme as operating out of Ashington, and although it's a private scheme, I don't suppose from a council point of view we're supposed to push it, but we visited this scheme which has the most up-to-date modern technology that can cover any part of Northumberland, and it's monitored 24 hours a day. And the thing that amazed us the most was the actual initial cost, and the revenue running it was so small. So perhaps after the meeting, if you want to speak to me and Gordon, we can give you some details on that for your town council to pick up with.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Right, question 3 from Councillor Fairless-Aiken to Councillor Riddle.
Right. At Hexham Town Council, we've been working towards a dark skies town with the International Dark Skies Association and have adopted their responsible guidance in our planning committee. Will the administration undertake to work with the planning and highways departments to adopt this innovative and groundbreaking set of guidelines as council policy? Not only would it be fabulous for Northumberland with its Dark Skies National Park to have this rolled out for astro-tourism, health benefits to humans and the non-pollution of our natural environment, but it would also be hugely beneficial to energy saving costs.
Councillor Riddle.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm a great supporter of dark skies myself as well. I do find it a little bit amusing that it's dark skies after we've just been complaining about antisocial behaviour, but there you go. You've asked me the question. The answer is really a planning answer because, as you know, we've just adopted the local plan. And on top of the local plan, there's going to be lots of supplementary planning documents. So this is a specific policy area that will be formalised under supplementary planning guidance documents, alongside other policy areas such as open place space, developer contributions, and the likes of climate change. These will be attached to the local plan and set out as NCC policy for determining future planning applications. There is a cross-party member local steering group, and that will be presented with officer recommendations for what goes into these supplementary planning guidance documents. It will then be consulted on by the public, and eventually it will become an SSP. Thank you.
Excellent. That's good to hear, going into the dark winter with our black hole. Thank you.
I don't think that was a question. There we are. Okay, I'll go to Councillor Hill to the leader.
Thank you, Chair.
The Queen's Garden, sometimes pluralised to the Queen's Gardens, in the west end of Tweedmouth, is situated in the shadow of the Royal Tweed Bridge with stunning views across the river. Its magnificent backdrop also includes the Tweedmouth War Memorial and the iconic Berwick Old Bridge. In 1956, Queen Elizabeth II visited the Queen's Garden with the Duke of Edinburgh and was presented with a salmon by the then Mayor. Do you agree that this would be an ideal spot for a permanent memorial to the late Queen?
Peter.
Yes, I do. I think it would be an ideal suggestion to go with, I hope, lots of other suggestions that come in from the public to our consultation that we're holding around finding a memorial or memorials across the county. I think Berwick, the gardens in Berwick, and I think we need to thank Francis Povey and Kate Dixon, I think it is, who are great officers and have done wonderful things to the landscape and the surroundings in Berwick. And Berwick's a lovely place. And I think having a memorial in Berwick would be a good thing. And I would very much support that.
Supplementary, Councillor Hill.
Thank you for that answer. And could I just ask you if you would agree with the additional point about the appropriateness of Berwick being a memorial for the late Queen, given all the work that she has done to support the union, which is at odds with many politicians, both sides of the border, that have actually even fuelled divide, where we need a cross-border cooperation. So would you agree with the additional point? And I know Councillor Hunter and Councillor Seymour agree with Berwick would be an ideal spot with its position on the Scottish border in light of the Queen's work.
Yeah, I think that's a very thoughtful, thoughtful point to make. One of the proudest achievements I think we can all share in is the reconstruction of the Union Chain Bridge, which is very close to Berwick, and is a fantastic testament to cross-border, cross-council working. That is due to open in the fairly near future. And for me, and it's only my opinion, but for me, perhaps looking at the naming of that bridge might be something that we might look at. But Berwick is a very special place and does deserve to be very much a centre of a memorial to Her Majesty so that we can remember her and everything she did.
Question 5, Councillor Dale to Councillor Patterson.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. Complaints have been raised about the delivery of social care services in Northumberland. Please could you confirm what the Council is doing to respond to these concerns?
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that question, Councillor Dale. It is a very important question. I'll just turn my back right round so I can read properly from this. Unfortunately, it is proving challenging to secure sufficiency of some social care services in Northumberland currently, and in particular home care, although there are some indications that residential and nursing care may be affected as well. This situation is not unique to Northumberland, and regionally and nationally, it is the case that most local authorities are having similar issues to varying degrees. It is understood that some are facing significant worse pressure than we are managing in Northumberland currently. At the time of writing this, there are 220 clients in Northumberland where the teams cannot immediately secure packages of home care to meet assessed need, and the figure has remained above 200 for several months now. A number of measures are being put into place for those individuals and families who cannot cope in the short term, including, amongst other things, short-term temporary residential placements, support from Northumberland Communities Together, and the use of council internal rehabilitation services away from their normal. The key issue is a lack of available workforce, which appears to be linked to competition for labour from other markets. The issues began almost immediately the restrictions on COVID started to lift last summer. and providers started reporting staff leaving to take up posts in other sectors, including public houses, restaurants, retail and leisure. The pressure is being felt most acutely in the north and the west of the county, but there are issues right across the geography of Northumberland. A number of things have been done to try and assist the market, including support with recruitment, advertising and training for providers, and this support is still ongoing. There has been some financial support as well, the most significant being the council offering funding to support providers to pay the real living wage from the 1st of April this year. Aside from the continuation of the various types of support mentioned above, senior officers are considering possible further options in relation to support for travel costs for home care workers. This could significantly benefit the more rural areas where recruitment and retention issues seem to be the most challenging. Thank you.
Supplementary, Councillor Dale.
Thank you. Can I first of all say thank you for that response, because actually it is full. My biggest issue is obviously local people in my area. But actually, since this question was asked, I've had a lot of members who've come to me and said they've also got problems with the provision of care. And likewise, the Health Watch report for July says one of the three issues being raised is the problem of the care service provision in Northumberland. And I think we all understand and thank the staff for doing everything they can. However, it is a difficult situation. We did, in the last budget, put nearly £5 million extra money into social services. And I know that this council has actually lifted the salaries of the social care workers. And I'm glad to hear that they're going to provide further funding.
Dale,
for, I'm just asking the question.
It's been quite a long introduction, so I think you can get to the question.
Thank you. And that you are actually providing further costs. What I would like to know is, with the funding for the extra funding that was put into social services, has that been spent? And likewise, can we just ask that you are asking for voluntary redundancies in this council, that there are no voluntary redundancies are taken from social services?
Councillor Patterson.
Councillor Dale, thank you very much for that. Adult social care is something that means a lot to me as the portfolio holder. So please be assured that I will do everything possible to make sure our residents in this county are well looked after. That's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to return to the agenda, although you might be turning it on very soon anyway. But we go to motions, and motion number 1, in accordance with Council Rules of Procedure number 10, Councillor Patterson to move the following motion received by Democratic Services on 9th of August 2022. Castle upon Tyne City Council has made a shortlist to host the Eurovision Song Contest in 2023. Sadly, this is due to war-torn Ukraine being unable to host themselves due to the Russian invasion. I don't know if you want to... Do you want to take that, Councillor Patterson, from there?
I can do, certainly. Newcastle upon Tyne Council, I need to stand up, sorry about that. Newcastle upon Tyne City Council has made the shortlist to host the Eurovision Song Contest in 2023. Sadly, this is due to war-torn Ukraine being unable to host it themselves due to the Russian invasion. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to welcome a huge number of international visitors, performers and media to the city of Newcastle upon Tyne. If Newcastle's bid is successful, this would hugely benefit our own beautiful county of Northumberland, and we would be delighted to welcome European visitors to come and explore our beautiful coastline and countryside and enjoy the county's full and rich heritage. I propose that the leader write to Newcastle upon Tyne City Council offering Northumberland County Council's support and good wishes for a successful and winning bid to host the Eurovision Song Contest in the Toon in 2023.
I confirm you're proposing that, Councillor Patterson. And Councillor Stewart, you are seconding that. That's great. So what I now do is I now move to debate, don't I? Yeah. So is there anyone who wishes to have any debate on that subject? Councillor Hill.
Just a point, you mentioned European visitors. There are, of course, Australia and Israel and other places as well. So it's even more opportunity for visitors.
A very good point, well made. Is there any more? I'd quite like Melbourne to hold it and get some nice tickets. That'd be very nice. Has anyone else got any debate they'd wish to make on that? Shall we move straight to the vote? Yeah. Those in favour? Against? Abstaining? There's one person not voting at all, is there? So, thank you very much for that very efficient council. Thank you very much. I go to motion number 2 in accordance with council rule of procedure number 10. Councillor Hardy to move the following motion received by Democratic Service Manager on the 9th of August 2022. Councillor Hardy.
Thank you, Chair. This motion calls for Northumberland County Council to reply to the consultation on DEFRA's proposal to install a highly protected marine area, a fishing ban, around Lindisfarne and the Farne Islands. This proposal will have a devastating effect on Holy Island, where there has been fishing since long before the Lindis Gospels were written. Fishing is an integral part of the life and soul of the island. The proposal would threaten the livelihoods of the young families who rely on fishing and make the island a less attractive place to live. Northumberland County Council has done a fantastic job promoting tourism. Our pubs and restaurants are full of people who want to enjoy sustainable local crab and lobster. This proposal would close the main fishing grounds and make restaurants source shellfish from further away. This issue is for our whole county. Fishermen from up and down the coast fish this area. If local fishermen are banned from here, they will move to other parts of the coast, displacing fishermen there and putting pressure on fish stocks elsewhere. It would have repercussions from Berwick to Blythe. We all want to protect our seas, but this is not the answer. These small boats follow the rules to make our seas a better place for their children and their grandchildren to follow them. Northumberland County Council shall respond to the consultation on the highly protected marine area, rejecting the proposal on the grounds of socio-economic grounds. Thank you.
Proposing that?
That is my proposal.
And Councillor Brenner-Thompson, you're standing to second that. Thank you. Okay. Is there any debate on that at all? Councillor Carty first.
Can I just come in with a couple of things? It talks about a very local area, you're right. It will have an impact on the rest of the coastal areas around Northumberland, right across from Berwick, right the way through to Blythe, right? We need to have a further consultation on this. It needs to be looked into properly, because it will displace fishermen. It will take livelihoods away from other fishermen in other towns, because the fishermen from the Lindisfarne area will be displaced to them places. It will not just have a massive impact on the incomes of fisher folk, but it will have an impact on the marine life as well, because you will end up with overfishing in those other areas, right? We need more information and more clarification on this, right? We need to know who's actually going to go back to DEFRA, to IFCA, to say what we think about this. So we just need some more clarification, because it's not right that you're just looking at one community to take this business away from. We need to look across the whole of Northumberland in general, not just one area. It's unfair to pick one area out. And, you know, we do have good tourism in the area. We do have protected areas already. So we just need to have a really good overview of this, another look at it, and get the right answer. That's all I've got to say.
The next speaker is Councillor Swinbank.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to Councillor Hardy for bringing this. This is something that definitely needs to be debated. However, I think the approach is wrong-headed. Firstly, of course, any effect on fishing businesses must be mitigated by DEFRA in anything that they do. Small local fishing boats are important businesses, and they can and should be able to operate sustainably. Secondly, DEFRA have handled this very poorly. The consultation has been very much top-down. There hasn't been proper engagement with local stakeholders. However, on the wider scale, fisheries policy over many decades has been the result of poor political decisions and has resulted in the decline of fisheries, biodiversity and abundance of many species in the North Sea, and that goes back many, many years. Many areas of biodiversity are still declining, and that is why our government has come up with their 25-year environmental plan, which includes coastal waters. And to quote, they say, to leave the environment in a better state than when we found it. This consultation on the HPMA, which is effectively a no-take zone around Lindisfarne, is for a pilot to better understand how biodiversity can recover, should it be given the chance to do so. We should not dismiss it out of hand. The benefits of establishing a no-take zone can only be assessed by doing so. Benefits to all biodiversity, including all the species who live in the zone. The benefits to commercial fisheries will spill out to the wider plan area. Commercial species such as herring, cod, plaice, mackerel, all will have spawning grounds in these areas. And benefits to tourism of what would be the first coastal no-take zone in the UK. If we're talking about science, we've looked in recent years. We've had a project at the Bamborough Bones. We've looked at the science of how people lived in ancient times. It's been highly successful and has brought a lot of tourism and a lot of interest locally in the county. We're establishing biodiversity net gain sites. If those are successful, they will benefit people and nature. This proposal should be no different. NCC officers should be engaging DEFRA in a dialogue over the consultation. The boundaries of the area are being consulted upon, and we may wish to support a smaller area or numbers of smaller zones. We have declared a climate emergency as a local authority. This must include looking at enhancing carbon capture in the marine environment. Intertidal mud, salt marsh and seagrass can all absorb carbon if indeed they're in an improving condition. The reason for an HMPA, a no-take zone, is for biodiversity recovery, that is, leading to a thriving ecosystem. As a local authority, we're looking at declaring a biodiversity nature, or in other words, a nature emergency. These marine habitats are in a degraded condition, that is DEFRA's assessment. Of 873 species present in the area, 40 are threatened or important benthic mammal or bird species. As a credible local authority making evidence-based decisions in line with our policies, then we simply must have a dialogue with DEFRA, not simply dismiss their proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Swinbank. I've got Councillor Renner-Thompson, and then it'll be Councillor Hunter. Councillor Renner-Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's hard really to overstate the devastating impact that this proposal would have on our fragile coastal communities which we represent. I've been at the public meetings in sea houses. I've helped organise a few of them. The fishermen are terrified of losing their livelihoods. Decisions to invest in boats and fishing gear and employ more staff have already been put off for another year. Similar decisions have been made at the seafood processing plants in Berwick and Eyemouth. Just one of those plants estimates its annual catch from the proposed ban area to be worth around £10 million to the local economy. And for what gain would this bring? The inshore sea here is already heavily protected by existing legislation. The Northumberland Inshore Fisheries and Conservation Authority, which is funded by Northumberland County Council and accountable to those of us in this room, has already passed bylaws stopping all bottom trawling of the sea out to 6 miles. Fishermen have been cooperating for many years, throwing back undersized or pregnant lobsters into the sea to ensure a future for themselves and their children. The existing pot industry is healthy and environmentally sustainable as it is. The environmental impact of the scheme would be negligible, and forcing boats to leave Holy Island and sea houses to fish elsewhere would in fact put unnecessary pressure on other parts of the coast. We are used to this in our part of the world. Last year, Natural England tried to impose a dog walking ban on some of our beaches. In 2018, the £3 million refurb of Sea Houses Pier was delayed for a year because the new concrete shell would take 6 inches of seabed away. How many of you know that right now, all planning permission is on hold from Belford up to Berwick and up to 10 miles inland at the demand of Natural England without any consultation with local representatives or our MP? Local businesses are struggling, people are struggling, families are struggling, and there seems to be no democratic accountability to these people. And that is why we have to have this motion today, so it gives it some political legitimacy and we can have a chat about it. I hope members can support this motion, which gives our officers a concrete mandate to reply to the DEFRA consultation, rejecting this latest proposal, which would have a huge negative impact on Northumberland. The aims of the scheme are noble, and we do not object to the one which is further out to sea. There are 2 proposed in Northumberland. But if you looked around the country and tried to find a location that would impact a community the most, this is probably that location. If this was, say, on the south coast, outside of Bristol, the impact on the community of Bristol would be negligible. This would absolutely destroy Holy Island, and it would have a devastating impact on the parishes around it. And one of the other members has said, oh, we need to have more consultation. That would be nice, but it's not our consultation to run. The consultation closes next week. We just need to respond to DEFRA saying that we're not in favour of it. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Hunter.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's something that needs to be supported, hopefully by this council. Holy Island has got a lot of tourism, but we've got to remember the locals, the main business is fishing. And it's not just fishing for Holy Island and sea houses, it's the ongoing businesses that's located and are connected with it. It is going to have a detrimental impact on the businesses locally. Yes, we support tourism, but North Northumberland needs more than just tourism. We need all businesses, and I will support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hunter. Councillor Reid, and then I've got Councillor Dale and then Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks, Chair. It was just a question, really. And I guess it puts us on a bit of horns of a dilemma. The last sentence of the motion, we respond to the consultation on highly protected marine areas, rejecting the proposals on environmental, social and economic grounds. What do our officers tell us about this? I mean, the officers, the organisation itself might decide that this is a good idea. So the officers produce a report that says, well, actually, it's a test. They're just going to see whether it works. There's going to be all this other stuff, mitigation in place, but we just want to see whether it's a good idea or not. The council have already decided whatever that report says. The politicians have said, no, we're going to reject it. So and if we haven't got the evidence, can we just, on the form, on the consultation form, can we just boldly say that without producing any evidence that actually those things are true. We've just got to be very, very careful how you manage this, because if the Environment Agency come back and have seen some report of ours from officers that says actually we think this is a good thing, where does that leave us as politicians who've decided, not having had the evidence? We haven't seen the evidence. We're just going off what the motion says. So you just, obviously I'm not going to vote for this, so it's up to you lot. But you've just got to be very, very careful about how you vote for this, because where does it leave the council in the end if you haven't actually got the evidence? Thanks.
Okay, well, I think that at the end of the debate, Councillor Hardy will answer some of those points, but I've got the next speaker as Councillor Dale.
Sorry, I just want to add that one thing that Councillor Reid has just mentioned, that obviously this is a political position, and I think evidence is required. And I'm not sure what the MP is, who the MP is for that area, and what their views are on it, but I think that it would be useful to have the MP's views on this, to actually support this motion, if that is what is required, because obviously they will be the people who actually work with government to actually take this forward. So I think it'd be quite good that we do have the MP's input into this.
Okay, Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Chair. As someone who represents a small fishing community on the Northumberland coast, I can totally appreciate what impact this would have on Holy Island and the area around that. And I have every sympathy with them, because I know for a fact how much damage it would do to an area like that. And I have had some of my residents actually raise concerns with regards to this and the knock-on effect that this would have. And I know in the motion that it does state about having repercussions from Berwick to Blythe. Actually, I think that would potentially be further, because we are further south than Blythe and we're already worrying about that. So we do see this, and I think it's something that we've built so much of our industry and history on fishing that I completely understand we need to make sure it's sustainable, but what's being proposed just is not the answer.
Thank you. Councillor Murphy.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think evidence is the key word, and I think that's what we as a group were struggling with. I think Councillor Renner-Thompson has said quite clearly that if this goes ahead, it would destroy Holy Island. I think you'd said that families would be devastated, fishing community would be destroyed. I'd like to know what the numbers are. I remember when fox hunting was debated, and people said it would destroy the economy in Northumberland, and then people went looking for evidence, and actually it would be nice to know how many families would be impacted, how many individuals would be impacted, what the economic loss to that community would be. The other thing that concerns me is Councillor Renner-Thompson said that this will be destructive to this area, but if it happened off the coast of Bristol, it would have minimal impact. So why would DEFRA do this? You know, again, in terms of evidence, why would they go out of their way to destroy a small fishing community? There has to be more to this than we're aware of, so we're just simply asking for more evidence. Thank you.
Councillor Jeff Watson.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't intending to speak on this, but as a representative for a coastal town of Amble, some of the things that have been said, I think I'd like to add my voice to it as well. I mean, Guy said how it would destroy the area. I knew what he was going to say, so I didn't think I needed to say anything more. But if you take the town of Amble and you take the harbour in the centre of Amble, that's what our town is all about. That's why we've got tourism. That's why people come to the town and spend their money in the restaurants and other things. Without those boats coming in and out, 30 of them, that, and the number of people who work on it, the number of families who work on it, and then the people who process the fish, and then the people who deliver the fish, and then the people who prepare them and send them to supermarkets, it would have a devastating effect. I understand what Jeff's saying, and I don't know all the details, I don't know all the proof, but what I do know is, as a harbour commissioner myself in Amble, the number of fishermen who've come to me and said, this is an absolute disaster for us here in Amble. And my vote will very firmly go to support this motion, and I hope yours will too.
Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't expect to have to speak on this matter. I'm a bit disappointed that I do have to speak, because it seems to me there's a bit of a logical problem here, because we're talking about lack of evidence. Quite right. There's no evidence from DEFRA that enables us to support this motion. That's the problem. It's not us that's asking for consultation, it's them. And where have they provided evidence that this won't actually have a devastating effect? Of course it will have an impact. We depend on fish. It's sustainable. It's a good food. And it's local. And the jobs are local. And it's quite obvious we have to make a political judgment here. Without enough information to show what the impact will be, and we haven't got it, we should say no. And I'm going to have to say no too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flux. Right, so I've listened to what's been said, and I've always listened to what Councillor Reid says, because I think he's really got a lot of sense sometimes. But on this occasion, I'm not so sure. Evidence.
Chair, I want to withdraw that.
So, right then. If you think back to when we were young, little kiddies, right? Where did your parents ever want to take you on the little trip out on the Sunday in Northumberland? They'll only ever take you to one place, and that was up the coast, and you usually ended up at Holy Island. Right, when I was a student a few years ago, and all my college friends are further down the country, where do we want to go in Northumberland? We went to Holy Island. And it's just a jewel, it's one of the jewels of Northumberland's crown, in Northumberland's crown. So, why does DEFRA want to do this? Well, I don't know why DEFRA wants to do anything, to tell you the truth. Because what's probably happened is, you've got some bright spark in London, and I apologise to people who may be from the south of the country, who woke up one morning and thinks, I want to make an impact, right? And they just say, oh, Holy Island, I've heard of that. It's had a few saints up there. We'll save it. We'll save the world. We'll ban fishing up at Holy Island. Never mind about the poor people who can make a living there from fishing and from the tourism side. Let's just do it. No evidence. We've seen it happen time and time again. And while they're at it, they've also impacted that area with the devastating new planning regulations up there, which doesn't allow anybody to, I think it's 6 parishes in that area, aren't allowed to do anything unless they have multi-million-pound sewage systems in. And yet there's no evidence at all of any building up there, new construction up there, affecting the area. So why does DEFRA want to do anything? I don't know. Maybe they've never been up here. But they certainly, on what they're trying to do here, it would appear that they don't know what the heck they're doing. But anyway, this is something, we have discussed this. If you even think back, Leader, I know you have a lot on your mind. If you think... if you think back to, was either informal cabinet, we did actually discuss this. And we did take a very dim view on it at the time. Now, unfortunately, we're getting to the time when the consultation come to a head. But for the people of us in this chamber, who represent the people and the businesses in Northumberland, there is no other thing we can do but reject this.
I've got Councillor Towns.
Thank you, Chair. Like the previous speakers, I didn't really expect that there should be much debate on this. But I've heard a couple of things I think need to be addressed. So the point about conflict with officers' opinions, it was only a few weeks ago when Max Calla stood up there in front of our now King, the picture of our now King, and told us that power in this county lies with the members of this council, not with the officers, and that for far too long a number of officers had maybe forgotten that, and a number of the people in this room had maybe forgotten that. No offence to any of the excellent officers in this council, but their role here is to implement the policy decisions that are made by us in this chamber. And so it is within our power, our democratic power, to respond to this consultation in the way that's being suggested and to reject it, regardless of any previous reports or anything else. So I think that addresses that point. The second point on evidence, I mean, really, what more evidence do you need? I think we're in the realms of what I might describe as the bleeding obvious here. Asking for evidence that this is going to cause devastation to the fishing communities at Holy Island is a bit like asking for evidence that if I punch you in the face, it's going to hurt. It's bleeding obvious, it's going to hurt. And our response to this is bleeding obvious. We must say no to it. Thank you.
Councillor Mark Mather.
Thanks, Chair. I fully support this motion brought by Councillor Hardy. Time and time again, I've watched DEFRA make these decisions without knowing the local impact it will have. This is not something we can just switch off for a trial. We've heard this, it's just a trial. If we lose these skills, these local people, the hand-down things that you cannot learn in a university, they're lost forever. We've seen it in agriculture, now we try and train it in universities. It doesn't work. So this small trial will have a lifetime impact on our fantastic coastal town. And when we're talking about going green, our green initiatives, food miles, Northumberland produces the best food on our doorstep and we ship it all away. This is on our doorstep, being eaten by local people and visitors alike. That's what we should be supporting, and I fully support Councillor Hardy's motion.
Councillor Grimshaw.
Bred in Newbigin, and I take on board Councillor Horncastle's point. A lot of people used to flock to Newbigin, and that was an area of beautiful fishing boats, and it was a fishing village where people used to sell their fish and crabs and lobsters outside their properties. And we lost that in Newbigin, and it seems to be a travesty that other people are going to have this, be under the same circumstances. They're losing their livelihoods, because we were very proud to have a little fishing village in Newbigin, and still are actually, because we've recovered, but still there's only 2 cobles, and now our fishermen fish from Blythe. So I think it's imperative for all who would like to have a little bit more meat on the bones. It's imperative to support these little communities. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, before Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask, if we support the motion to reject, does that stop it? Does that stop whatever happens? Because it seems to me, I can perfectly appreciate what's going to happen if this takes place, and we should be backing our residents. What I don't know is any of the evidence that DEFRA's used, because they have not presented a case. Certainly not to me. So if this is going to stop it, maybe, and get them to rethink the case and come to us with a perfectly rational and reasoned case why they want to do this, that would be another matter. But I think we should reject it and make that point.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak on this? I can't see it. I will come to Councillor Hardy in a moment, but I think the Chief Executive wished to come in.
Thank you, Chair. I'm afraid I'm not an expert on this. The Executive Director, Rob Murphy, who knows all about this, isn't here today. He's out of the region. But I've furiously been looking at some of his background papers on this. And I will just make 2 comments. I found the original DEFRA proposal here for this. And in the risks and disbenefits, it identifies a loss in income to the local community of between £600,000 and £9 million a year. It's a loss of income to the local community. That, to my mind, as a regeneration professional, demonstrates that there would be a severe economic and therefore social disbenefit impact on the community. It also lists various other risks to the wider fishing fleet, to health and safety, because the small boats would have to go into deeper water, which is obviously a health and safety risk. That's all I've been able to glean for the moment, members, but I just thought I would add that to try to address a specific point that I think rightly Councillor Reid made about the evidence. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hardy, if you'd wish to sum up.
I appreciate some of the concerns that people have, but I was elected to represent the people of Holy Island. If this motion fails and DEFRA impose a fishing ban, albeit a pilot, we will lose 6 fishing boats, which is the equivalent of losing 6 farms on the mainland. It will devastate the island's economy, and it will make it unaffordable for the local fishermen to continue because they cannot trawl elsewhere. They're an indigenous species. They're an endangered species. This council has been trying to support them. We are trying to retain people on Holy Island with affordable housing and with the 2050 project. If we lose the fishermen, we lose the school, we lose the heart of the island. We become a museum like Beamish. Last person across the causeway, switch the lights out as they go home. When we talk about evidence, I have attended the meetings, I have spoke at the meetings, I have listened to the lack of evidence and the flawed evidence put forward by DEFRA. They did not realise that Holy Island was a tidal causeway, something that's easily overlooked unless you want to actually go to Holy Island. They believed there was a problem with dog walking on the Farne Islands. I offered to lend them my dog to walk across to the Farne Islands. They said that there was boats anchoring on the marsh. I offered them the opportunity to walk across that quicksand to a boat that I would put there. They didn't take me up. They said that the impact of fishing from the shore was devastating. I offered them the opportunity to walk from Berwick to Budle Bay and count the number of fishermen. They wouldn't take me up, but there is none. The fishermen of Holy Island do not trawl. They're not trawlermen. They do not scrape the seabed dredging for mollusk. The crab and lobster fishermen that feeds a local industry, that feeds a local community, that feeds our county. And politically, I am elected to support them. And I have the support of my MP. I have the support of most of the parishes directly to me. The rest are in the process of answering this by rejecting the proposal of the highly protected marine area. And I'll finish by saying the islander is an indigenous species. If this happened anywhere else in the world, there would be a public outcry. Let us support what we have got, not what someone else wants, because they thought we were an easy target.
Thank you for summing up there, Councillor Hardy. I will now go to the vote. All those in favour of the motion? All those against? All those in abstention? The motion passes. Thank you very much for that. And I will carry on with the agenda, and I go to point 8 of your agenda. Thank you very much, Council. Point 8 in our agenda is report of the Executive Director of Public Health and Community Services, Northumberland Inequalities Plan 2022 to 2032. The leader will introduce the matter, and then there will be a short presentation from Liz Morgan, Executive Director of Children's Services and Public Health.
Thank you very much indeed. It gives me great pleasure not great pleasure.
Just my script's wrong. It says children's. You're not the director of children's services.
No.
I've got more work for you.
So there we are. That's a test in real life. Liz Morgan, you all know, she has been a driving force behind our new 10-year inequalities plan. She's going to give a short presentation. I'm going to formally propose this plan as being the right thing for us to do. Hopefully have a seconder and we'll agree in due course.
So you've proposed that, and I believe Councillor Ferguson is seconding that. Thank you. And I'll pass over to Liz.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure how I'm going to follow Councillor Hardy, but I'm going to give it my best shot. So hopefully you've all read the report, so I'm just really going to summarise the key points on half a dozen slides. I think everybody here will appreciate that the COVID pandemic and the emerging cost of living crisis is having a significant impact on existing inequalities in our county. And it's particularly affecting those who are the poorest and most marginalised in our communities. It's affecting those the most. Now, recognising that the leader made a commitment earlier in the year to really tackle inequalities, and this plan is the output of the work that's emerged from that statement. Next slide, please. So we had our Inequality Summit back in March, which I know a few of you attended. That was followed up by the 12 locality events, which I know that all elected members were invited to, and I know that a lot of you attended those. And I think those events really signalled to our communities that we were taking this seriously and that we wanted their voices to be heard. The outputs of the summit and the locality events are really what has developed the plan, which is outlined in the report. So that plan has been to the Health and Wellbeing Board, it's been to Overunion Scrutiny, it's been to Cabinet, and it's now coming to full council. Probably just useful to emphasise that this is a collaborative plan. It's a plan for Northumberland, not for Northumberland County Council specifically. It's been done, as I said, collaboratively with Health and Wellbeing Board partners, so the NHS, Health Watch, voluntary and community sector. And certainly the aspiration is that Health and Wellbeing Board members will sign up to a compact, which is really just an agreement committing them to take the inequalities plan into account when they're developing their own plans. Next slide, please. So the plan itself is really orientated around 5 principles or principal areas of activity and 3 sort of screening questions. So the first area of activity is around looking at everything through an inequalities lens. And so for us, that would be, for instance, thinking about what will a policy or a programme have in terms of inequalities impact. How can we measure performance through an inequalities lens? Because actually, if we're not measuring our performance in that way, how can we demonstrate that we're making any progress? The second area of the action plan is really about the voice of residents and data sharing, and we need to make sure that there is parity between those 2 areas of activity, because data is really important in terms of supporting evidence, but actually we need to make sure that that is, triangulated by what communities are telling us. So, for instance, we have a huge amount of data within our own organisation, and we need to get much better at sharing that data, both within the council, but also between the council and other partners, particularly the NHS, because actually, until we've got that holistic view of what's going on in our communities, particularly the assets in our communities, we don't know what the needs are. So that is a real focus of activity, and we also need to make sure that our residents' voices are heard. So the proposal is that we implement or re-implement the residents' survey, and we make much better use of the links into our community networks. The third area of work is around ensuring that we always consider the strengths in our community, and that's really where the workforce development comes in. because we need to make sure that everybody in the organisation understands what asset-based community development is, and in particular what it isn't. And what does good look like for us as an organisation? And actually, everybody in the organisation needs to know what their contribution is to this inequalities plan. And the policy conference on inequalities, which I think is going to be held now on the 12th of October, is part of that workforce development process. The fourth area is around enhancing our services to ensure equity and access to opportunity. And that's really about how can we commission differently, placing communities at the heart of our commissioning process. And then finally, how do we maximise our civic and statutory level responsibilities? So as an anchor institution in Northumberland, what can we do to address inequalities? How can we build on the existing corporate social responsibility work that we already have in place? And then all of that needs to be seen through these three screening questions. What can communities do for themselves? What can communities do with a little bit of help from us? And actually, what is it that communities can't do that needs to be done by agencies and institutions? Next slide, please. So I don't think anybody in the room is going to be shy of the challenges. We do face a real challenge in terms of trying to address the inequalities that are facing our communities. One of those challenges is around the sort of restructure of the NHS, but I think for me that is also an opportunity. We are blessed with having really good working relationships with our NHS partners, and I think that gives us a really good opportunity to make sure that NHS plans, both locally and actually at an integrated care board level, are aligned to our Northumberland strategy and plan. Funding might be seen as a challenge as well, but actually this isn't about putting funding into addressing inequalities. This is about changing the way we do our business, so changing the relationship with our communities and doing things differently. And I think the statistics that are up there in terms of the challenge really speak for themselves, really. They really demonstrate some of the inequalities which exist in our communities. Next slide. So we have a high-level action plan, which is outlined on pages 10 to 15 of the report. And one of the questions that was raised at OSC, and in fact has already been raised today, was about cost of living. So it's all very well having a shiny inequalities action plan, but actually what are we going to do for people who are struggling in our community now? And as the leaders already referred to, we have been working collectively, Mo and Emma Richardson in particular, on developing a poverty and hardship plan. And that is at a quite mature level of development. And some of the initiatives that we've identified as part of that plan are already being implemented. So we're already trying to address some of the issues that are facing the most deprived people in our community. And actually that poverty and hardship plan will absolutely be part of our overall approach. So what we'll be focusing on in the short term is the delivery of the poverty and hardship element of it. We will be focusing on setting up that cross-party working group. We'll be working with the strategic change programme to look at how we can commission differently. And we've identified a set of short, medium and longer term metrics which we can use to hold ourselves to account. So we've got 4 recommendations here for you to consider as full council. And I'm not going to go through all of those, but I think my final point is that for this plan to be successful, it has got to be a plan that we can all sign up to for the long term, because history tells us that if we keep chop and changing our approach to inequalities, we're not going to achieve what we're trying to achieve. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Do we have any members' question? I can see Nick Morford has a question.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's great that our administration is trying to reverse the harm done by the years of austerity imposed on the nation by the Conservative government. But as Liz Morgan just told us, we mustn't underestimate the size of the challenge. The Inequalities Plan is no more than a first step towards reversing the harm that's been done, but it is a step in the right direction, and it's got the Green Group's full support. Talking of support, we both feel that a critical element of implementing this Inequalities Plan will be the provision of increased support where it's needed to town and parish councils and community groups, and it seems to us that this support is badly lacking at present. We were very pleased to read on page 10 of the plan that the need for improved public transport and opportunities for active travel were among the dominant themes to have emerged from the locality workshops. And we were delighted to read on page 14 that a transport equity audit is planned, albeit not for 2 or 3 years. Given that 22% of households in Northumberland don't own a car, we see improving public transport and opportunities for active travel as being critical steps on the path to equality for all. We were also pleased to read on page 12 about the role of community allotments. Access to nutritious, affordable food is another critical piece of the jigsaw, and we're looking forward to running our ideas for community-supported agriculture projects past the attendees at the Equalities Policy Conference on October the 12th.
Okay, I think that was debate, so what I'll do is I'll take that as your contribution to the debate, which I'm sure will come after the questions. Any other questions? Or do you want to get Councillor Hunter? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. On the plan, yes, it's a high-level plan, but it's how are we going to deliver for the residents that needs that support on the ground? You talk about resident surveys, that's only going to go to the people that's actually going to respond to them, because then you only hear the voice that's actually willing to respond. And volunteers using parish councils and other groups. Yes, volunteers on the ground, but it's getting across that community. But parish councils, there's many parish councils are struggling to get hold of parish councillors, some that are very near being in quorum. So it's a case of how are we going to get that voice when parish councils are already struggling for volunteers?
What I'll do is I'll try and take a handful of questions together. So Councillor Dale had a question as well.
Just very quickly, this is not part of the debate. I wanted to ask, with the foreseeable future of having a large combined authority, how would we ensure that this is fed in? Because at the moment we have the North of Tyne Combined Authority Wellbeing Framework, and I totally support it. It's just that we mustn't lose the vision of actually what could be happening in future. So I don't know who would answer that. Maybe Rick could answer that.
Okay, I'll just check. Is there any more questions?
It's on page 8.
No, I'm just seeing if there's any other members have any questions. No, I can't see any. So we'll take those 2 questions, then we'll move to debate. So did anyone wish to answer those? The first one was on parish councils and on consultation in general.
Can I just have a quick go at that, and then Liz can follow on. On the question around parish and town councils, the reason that we want to have this policy conference on this in October the 12th, I think, is to get as many of you to come and feed in your ideas and to understand how we can all do our bit. We do have some money behind this, so it will be actioned. There will be money to help us. I don't promise that we can make huge progress over the next few years. Some of these things will take a long time, but if we don't start now, then we never will. And I would just like to also say thank you very much to the staff that have worked on this, but also to pay tribute to everybody that's already doing this work. It just felt to me a year ago that we needed to pull everything together under one plan, and that's what staff have done, and I'm very grateful for them to have done that. So far as work within the North of Tyne Combined Authority, we do very good joint work, and there are a number of projects underway at the moment, and there's no reason why those shouldn't continue. Thank you.
Liz, do you have any to add at all?
Yeah, Councillor Hunter, I think you make a really good point about the resident survey. And I think in conducting that survey, we want to make sure that actually those voices that we don't hear from quite as frequently as we would like to are heard. So it isn't, we're going to undertake that service using a variety of approaches, not just, provide an online survey for people to complete. We want to go out into communities and, speak to those people who we don't normally speak to.
Okay, Did Rick have anything to add on? No. Okay. Thank you. I will then go into debate. Councillor Ball.
Thanks, Chair. So, the North East Child Poverty Commission released a report today that 2 in 5 children in the North East are in poverty. That's 38% of children in the North East. I fully support 100% what we're doing here with the Inequalities report and the plan for the short term, the medium term and the long term and the cross-party working, because this isn't just this next term, it goes way beyond that, and we need to acknowledge that as well. So for me, it really is time that we get on with this. We need to start with the community wealth building, take the lead on levelling up on life expectancy and opportunities for the long term for the people of the North East, and let's work on these figures, because 2 in 5 children in the North East in poverty, it's really not good enough. So I look forward to working with everybody in this room and making a difference for them people right the way across the North East. Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else wish to? Councillor Patterson.
I can't say enough just how much as a council we are committed to closing the inequalities gap in Northumberland, and our Public Health Department, Northumberland's Community Together and our poverty lead have worked incredibly hard on this report and this plan. And just let's hope in the next few years that we in Northumberland and in the North East live longer and happier lives, and our children are really looked after. Just to quote you, Councillor Ball, I am concerned that child poverty is so prevalent, although I'd like to think that we are getting a lot better at looking after our children.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Thanks, Chair. I get kind of wound up and then I settle down about this. It's just, I wish just someone would tell me what having an area, or whatever at ABC thing, what are these volunteers actually going to do? How are they going to help us tackle inequality? What actually is going to happen? That's what I would like to know. It's a collection of words, and it kind of, I'm going to get myself depressed if I'm not careful. So we adopt this plan, and if any of you read the paper or saw on the internet, Liz Truss is going to abandon the sugar tax, so manufacturers can put as much sugar back into the drinks as they like. That takes out, I think it was some huge numbers, like £300 million a year that the tax provides that goes into breakfast clubs at the bottom end of the scale. And then she says, oh, by the way, I'm not fussed about the NHS obesity plan because I don't think government should be telling people what to eat or how to live their lives. So you've got the Conservatives at the top of the tree telling us all you can do what the hell you like. And we've got a very worthwhile plan that is undermined straight away by national government saying, we ain't going to tell you how to live. The only way you are ever going to tackle inequality is treat everybody fairly, make sure everybody gets the education they need, no matter how much that costs. Keep rural schools open. Do not put any of our children under 5 on a bus that takes them 45 minutes to get to school. Small rural schools. Feed them properly. Tell people not to drink as much. Tell people not to smoke at all. That is how you start tackling health inequalities. Not kind of... if somebody can just tell me what a band of volunteers in this, what is it, area-based asset, whatever it is. If you can tell me what those people are going to do once you've recruited them, what actually are they going to do? I remember years ago there was I think it was Monty Python or some sketch or other where they were parodying the Blue Peter. And what it was how to become a millionaire. The way to become a millionaire is think of something and sell it for £1 million. And this is what this is. It's just, can somebody, anyway, to wind up, can somebody just please tell me when you've activated these volunteers, which none of us are able to do, by the way. All of us have got falling memberships. All of us are finding it difficulty to find school governors, to fill volunteer posts, to get parish councillors. What are we going to offer these volunteers that all of these other things that you can volunteer for aren't offering? So anyway, can somebody tell me what specifically these volunteers are going to do?
Councillor Anne Dale.
First of all, can I just say thank you very much and thank you for this report. And I think everybody will remember that you listened to Liz, and that was through COVID, and how well her reporting went down. And I've read this, and it's an excellent report. I think one or two things that I would like to say, because Councillor Reid has obviously opened a debate. First of all, going back, I think, to 2013, which was based, and I think all schools had this, was Every Child Matters. And then we had a big debate and ongoing workshop about the Marmot Review. And in fact, I'm glad to see the Marmot Review is reported in here. However, it actually says, the state in the Marmot Review, that actually we've gone backwards. This whole region has gone backwards. And all of us here want every child to have the first and the right opportunity from the day they're born. That was the work we did with the Marmot Review, and I'm sure it was, with Lynn, you were involved? There was a lot of us who were involved, and we went through the whole level, all the way up, to understand the problems with deprivation, poor upbringing. There's all kinds of things that came. Could be poverty. It wasn't just poverty, because inconsistency and problems can come in wealthy families too, right across the board. And it's all been found, and maybe Jackie still has the reporting, which should be there, but we did a lot of 4 years of it. And I know all the schools did Every Child Matters, and it was very, very important. However, one of the things I would like to say, that I think I came from a Tynedale District Council, and it's important to recall that we all came from district councils. I was a district councillor, I've been a parish councillor, but actually in my area and the Tynedale area, we did have a strong asset-based community development, because we had to develop our own play parks, we had to develop them, the council didn't. So that was a growing, and you're talking about how we're going to grow communities. The best way of growing communities is actually giving them something to do, and not doing it for them, but giving them something to do. And I think this report reflects on that. There's one other thing that I think quite interesting was about all the changes in the NHS. And I think as a council, we should have a briefing on the whole of the NHS structure and how we are actually involved in it. Although there's all kinds, there's so many changes going on, that we actually, as councillors for our area, need to know where we can go or where we can attach people to, whatever. But I think that's the important thing. So if we can have a briefing on that, I think that would be helpful. The other thing is, just to support this inequality report, Calla is very clear that about the corporate plan, and I'm not going to say what it says here, well, I'll say a bit. It's rather incomplete documents, but it does not feel that like, place and people are at the heart of the plan. And I think we need to go back to review the corporate plan. It's in February, but this is based on what Calla says, to actually align it with the equalities plan that we have as the county council, which we're sharing broadly with everybody else as partners. So I think that would just support what we're meant to be doing. So maybe we can have a look at that. You can look at it on page 9 in the Calla report. But once again, I'd like to say thank you. And I think that what we've got here is a sound basis, but it's not going to be easy. It's going to take a long, long time. But I think we all have an input. I'm a great believer in every child should have the same start in life. And, you know, I'm not going to go away from that. I've always said that. But I'd like to thank you for this report. You have my total support. As I said, if we can have a little bit more extra, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, I've got Councillor Castle, then Councillor Hill, then Councillor Jones, and then Councillor Bowman. But what I'll do is we'll see where we are then, and then we might want to start thinking of wrapping up.
Thank you, Chair. I will make it brief, and this is twice exploded at the meeting, didn't expect to, but it's an important issue, this. However, I would like to sort of obliquely answer Councillor Reid's point. The government is not telling anybody what choices to make. It's enabling those choices to be better and more real, and opportunities to be better. And I quite agree, and I like the term that you levelling up. That's because far too used in the wrong way. We want that to happen from the bottom. And we want people whose lives have been blighted by opportunities that could and should be better. And it's within our power to improve them. Not to tell them what choices to make. I'm a libertarian. The role of government is to enable people to live better lives and have better opportunities, and to have for the economic conditions to flourish in which that is possible. And I think that is the role of government. It is not the role of government to tell people what they must do. But we know there are problems, and the data is so clear to us. What really shocks me is the life expectancy differences. That really is quite bad. Even I hadn't appreciated how wide a gap that is. Something must be done about that. It can't be done next week, next year. It's going to take a long time to promote the conditions in which that improves from the bottom up. I'm absolutely for that. And I hope that this is a start. And it'll have to be modified. And we should all be adaptable, willing to adapt when things don't work. Bin it and try something else that does. But what we're trying to do is legitimate and proper. And it's in the interest of our community and the interest of the whole nation that we actually get this going. But we're not telling anybody what choices to make. We're enabling them to make better choices. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Castle. I'll then go to Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. Just following on from what Councillor Castle said, I do agree. I have actually wondered for a long time why the Liberal Democrats still use the name Liberal in their party title. And I won't be joining Councillor Reid going around telling people not to have sugar, not to smoke, drink less, and so on. But I do agree with them. And we did have this debate at the Health and Scrutiny Committee. I do agree with them when you see this plan, you do think, but what about the sense of urgency? What about the specific measures and interventions that we need to have with the cost of living crisis? Because you just can't say it enough, and you can't overstate it at all, just how serious the situation is, and we want specific interventions. And when you hear things, and I'll give you one example, when you hear about children going to school and being hungry and not being able to eat, and dinner ladies in tears because kids are going out clearly and they haven't got any money to pay, and it's just not acceptable. So we need the specific interventions, but obviously this plan and this structure is a critical part of that.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Councillor Jones.
Thank you. Yes, I am in support of this plan, but I just wanted to take you to Liz's point about the three, sort of looking at what communities could do themselves, what they could do with a little bit of help, and what they can't do and need help for. And just like to congratulate the Matford Parish Council, who following COVID and Storm Arwen, which in itself devastated large stretches of the parish, they've set up a support network across the parish with a total support, total communications, starting with the parish councillors and working with volunteers. So there's a network, should anything like that happen in the future, and we're sure it will, that there aren't communities or residents left as they were during Storm Arwen. But they've also accepted that there's things they can't do, and they've contacted communities together and are working with them to provide some of the support they will need in such a situation. So I just wanted to congratulate them. And as I am on my feet, I'll just say to Councillor Reid that this council has had for the past 10 years an Ageing Well programme, which is well respected, has been nationally recognised, and was set up under his leadership when he was in the administration, and it is an asset-based approach working with volunteers. So it does work, Councillor Reid.
Thank you. Councillor Les Bowman.
Thank you, Chair. This morning I received some news that a former councillor to this chamber, Laura Pitcock, she is awarding £2,500 to a food hub in Seaton Delaval, which hands out free food to the community. And she did a run on the Great North Run and raised £5,000 that's split between two food hubs that are going towards the community. And I just want to mention that communities do come together and they do work together when there is a need. And when that need is poverty related, it's amazing the amount of people who actually stand up at the front and put their hands forward to help the community. There is never, ever a day where we have to look at the community to say, please come and help us. They come to us as councillors and say, we want to help. We want to help in the community where there's poverty, where we want to make a change in the community. And it's amazing, isn't it? A former county councillor has donated money, and many residents in my community actually come forward and they give hours of their time to help the other residents in the community. I look forward to this plan being put into action. I look forward to this being like a golden key that opens up opportunities and rids poverty from our communities. The day that we decide to close food banks and the day that we decide that that's enough, it is because there is no food poverty and there is no poverty, and people have a good sound footing in their economy within their communities to actually build their lives around their employment or whatever, where their finances come in. And this is part of it. And let's be proud of it. This is what we should be. We should be proud of this, and we should be singing it from the rooftops, because this is a smack in the face of the government, who's doing very little to actually change poverty in our communities. But we are changing it here in Northumberland County Council. Thank you, Chair.
Right, I've got Councillor Gallagher, Councillor Grimshaw and Councillor Wearmouth. And I think, is there anyone else who wants to speak? Councillor Fairless-Aitken, and then we'll wrap up with the seconder then proposer.
Sorry, Chair, am I going to get an answer to my question or not?
You'll get it
was a genuine question. I want to know.
If you're going to get it in the summing up. Okay. And if you don't, I'll make sure someone gets it to you. Councillor Gallagher.
Thank you very much, Chair. We are all county councillors around Northumberland, and nobody, and not any ward that we represent, can't say this isn't happening in my back door. I find it very difficult to hear a fellow councillor saying, well, just pick yourself up and things will get better. When you're down, you're down. A fellow councillor mentioned about the food bank, the breakfast clubs at schools. I know of schools that have got kids there that can't afford to get their kids in there, and they go there, and you're rightly so. and fellow councillors like myself have put money into schemes just to keep it afloat. This has been a deterioration since 2010 through this government. And I'm sorry, but you have to be there or you have to see it, and your heart goes out to people. Yeah. My fellow colleague said that 2 and 5, which is right, but on a specific age level. If you go under 3-year-olds, it's 50-50 poverty. So the reality is, I welcome what you're doing, Liz, and it's a shifting monster. It will change. It will change through this government's policies. It'll change through the whole idea of electricity and fuel bills, food bills, the cost of living. Everything's going to change. So to set a scheme out at the very beginning, it's not going to be that same scheme at the end. So be mindful that as it moves through. I watched Sky News this morning, and there was a real good conversation with a lady called Amanda Bailey, and she gave all the specifics of where the North East is at the minute. And I would recommend that officers and county councillors try and get that on catch-up. But please understand that there are families struggling, and our biggest problem is pride. Pride from families that don't want to ask for help. And I take my hat off to you. You say you're going to knock on doors, but you'll knock on a door where people are struggling, and they're not going to tell you that they're struggling. So I don't know how you're going to get over that hurdle, but any help from our Labour administration we will give you, and give you information of struggling families, struggling areas in our towns and neighbourhoods. But please, the people that are sitting here, don't think it's just happening in the South East. It's happening in all your communities, and we have to have a united fight on this. And all the best on what you're trying to do. Thank you very much.
Councillor Grimshaw.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I echo my fellow councillors' sentiments. And I was just going to say, you know, well, looking, and thank you, Liz and their team, for putting this report together. But when you read it, you know, you gasp, because you don't realise the depravity and etc. that's going on in our communities. It's frightening. But I must say that, in all fairness, I all think you do an absolutely magnificent job to what you do, especially communities together. My biggest fear and worry is that there isn't enough funding to support that from central government, and I would like to see, you know, perhaps, you know, the leader of the council lobbying for more money for to support these areas, because without money for to finance, yes, we can all volunteer, and the majority of we do volunteer, but we still need people that's actually paid to be leaders. So I would just please urge, you know, leader, if you lobby for as much money as we get, because I know the teams do a fantastic job, and without them would be certainly lost. Thank you.
Councillor Wearmouth.
Thank you. I wasn't going to speak on this, but if I may just deliver a mild rebuke, it irks me greatly that the party politics element is brought in on this. It really is frustrating, because so much good work has gone in by officers, by the cabinet members, by Councillor Ferguson, in particular by Liz, but by a whole host of people and you've gone to the sessions and you've contributed in a really constructive way. So to bring that sort of stuff into the discussion is somewhat frustrating, especially when you consider what the government has actually done for Northumberland, with funding for the Northumberland line, with funding for major employment sites, with COVID relief money and COVID money for businesses, and just recently a huge amount in terms of a package that's been delivered by national government to make sure that people can get through this winter and pay their fuel bills as well. And you've sat in here when we've gone through budget discussions and decisions and made sure that this administration, as a Conservative administration, if you want to politicise it, has made sure that we look after people who need our help the most. And it's something that the leader says in virtually every meeting that I have with him. And that's why this plan will work ultimately, because, like Councillor Jones has mentioned, it's going to be part of every policy. It's going to be the lens that we look through, and we're going to make sure that we touch it in every part of this council. Okay? So, thank you very much. I just wanted to mention that, because it has slightly soured what was otherwise a very, very professional and good discussion. Thank you. I'll continue if you like. No, I won't be directed to sit down, Councillor. Thank you, all of the same. I really do hope that you support this policy, this document, and it goes on and on and on. And you made a Freudian slip about the Labour administration. There's no such thing certainly in this county, and I hope there never will be.
I'm taking Councillor Fairless-Aiken, and I'm winding up on this one.
Just a quick one. Thank you to Liz and the team for this report. I read it with...
Excuse me, you said it was not fair. No, it is fair. I'm the chairman of this council and I will make those decisions. So I do apologise that I'm making that decision. Well, I don't apologise, actually. I'm making that decision. I don't expect to be told that I am unfair from the floor of this chamber.
I believe that's fair.
Excuse me. I will chair this meeting how I wish to chair this meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, Liz and the team, for that. To come back firstly to Councillor Hill's comment, as a Liberal Democrat, which is a union of two parties. I'm not making it party political, I promise. The Liberal side of me does think education and money. And yes, the money, I'm pleased to hear, is going to be there. The Social Democrat side of me says, yes, let's use local knowledge, communities to help these people. I'm happy to do that. We've been doing it at the Town Council with our poverty-proofing strategies. We've been doing it by liaising with Number 28, the Community House, who week in, week out fills out forms with people who can barely read or write. These are the people we need to support, and whether it's buying freezers and fridges for food banks or community groceries, I'm more than happy to share my knowledge on that with you, and I look forward to being a member of the committee very much. Thank you.
Now, to sum up, Councillor Ferguson, then the leader. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Chair. Just to begin, I want to say thank you very much to Liz, to Jill O'Neill, but also to Mo and Paul Brooks from NCT, who have taken a lot of time to sort of sit and explain a lot of things to me recently as they've been going through this work. The report that has been put together, I think, is very, very detailed. It's a very high-level report and it's very ambitious. And I think what we're seeing today is a lot of people asking, well, how is this going to be delivered? I've been sat asking these same questions and just taking the time to really explain some of it to me. We don't have really the time today, and this probably isn't the place to sit and try and thrash out the exact hows we're going to do something that's going to last not just 10 years, but hopefully much, much longer than that. Which is why really those of you who have got questions, I really encourage you to come along to the policy conference that we've got on the 12th of October, where we will be able to sit and just focus on discussing this and really thrash out some of those points. So I look forward to seeing you there, and we'll do that then. I will try and just answer a couple of the questions and a couple of the points, and then I'm going to really leave you with actually probably more questions than answers, because I want to send people away with a few thoughts that might be a bit of a challenging how we're used to doing things, to come back to that policy conference and really discuss how we're going to take this forward, because it is, as I say, a really ambitious plan. It's a really different way of thinking, and I know this has really challenged me when we've had some discussions. But just so that Councillor Reid doesn't get too much more upset, I will try and answer. When you're saying about how are we going to get these volunteers and what are these community builders going to do, we already have in Northumberland communities together some locality coordinators who are trying to link different voluntary groups. Often you'll see voluntary groups don't always communicate with each other in certain areas. Sometimes they're competing for funding and various other things, and actually by joining them together, if you've got a football club and a cricket club and an athletics club in a locality, and they're all wanting funding to improve facilities, if we can link them together and get them working together, we've got more chance of actually getting that outside investment. And that's what the community builders are going to be there to do. They're going to be people who are experts in their community, who know all these different groups that are there, and they're going to try and link them together and hopefully try and take that forward and support that. And where they're going to come from, well, we're not trying to get more volunteers. The volunteers are there, we just want to try and join it up a little bit more. And what I mean by that is, as Councillor Jones has pointed out, there's an area of good practice going on in Matfin at the moment, and there's lots of other areas of good practice going on across this county. We've got some fantastic voluntary organisations doing some fantastic work, but I'm sat there in this very southeast corner. I've got no idea what's going on in Wooler, and neither do many of my residents. But that doesn't mean that there's not something fantastic going on that could be shared. And rather than reinventing the wheel, we need to share that. And that's what we want this working group to start being, is to be that conduit for that, and making sure that we are getting out as members and supporting that, so that this can feed into the work that the council is going to be doing in really linking everything together, so that we can deliver for all of our residents and not just in certain areas. Because what we've got to remember is, you look at those statistics and you've got 17-year difference in healthy life expectancy between different parts of Northumberland. But that also means you've got very different inequalities in different parts of Northumberland, and this is why we need to have a cross-party working group that's also geographically representative, because we do have lots of different inequalities that we need to tackle, and we need to make sure we get that right. So when Councillor Ball says that she looks forward to working with the council on this, I look forward to working with yourself as well, because it's really important that we have representatives from different parties in different areas so that we can really tackle this. Councillor Reid also said about the government isn't going to tell people how to live. Actually, that's probably the opposite of what we want. What we want is the people telling us how they want to live and how they want their communities to work for them, how they want that community centre, how it can do better, what more services we can do. We want them telling us, not the government telling them. So actually, we're using that. That's where we're trying to go with this. And it's things like, we've got, as Councillor Bowman said, we've got these community food banks giving out food to people, no questions asked. But actually, is that a barrier? Is that, if we do that, yes, we give them that food, they need that support right there and then. But if they're not linked with other services, are we tackling the real reason behind those inequalities and behind that deprivation? We need to work with these community builders. We need to get with these communities working together, so that someone comes in and you've got a volunteer doing this who hasn't got the training, who hasn't got the support necessarily to recognise if people are suffering from addiction or from other types of exploitation or domestic violence, and how to tackle that. Those people will always need that food bank, and they become reliant on that. And it's the same with when people are saying we need more funding and we need more support. Again, that's just increasing reliance on the council. We need to flip our way of thinking and sort of be a bit more, actually, what can the communities do for themselves? And if you come along to the policy conference, we'll have Cormac Whistle, who's led with a lot of the support for this. It's a big thing that he talks about, is what communities can do for themselves, and how building that community resilience, like they're doing in Mafin, actually improves outcomes. And what we need to look at is, what can communities do for themselves? And it might be things that we're used to for decades and decades, and for political cycles, the council doing for them. But actually, does it need to always be that way? Can we challenge how we work and how we think? And that's really where we want to go. And this is why I'm really excited to be working with Liz and with others and with yourselves on this, because I think it is a really, really innovative piece of work that can really change the lives for people for the better. And as Councillor Wilmot says, it needs to be non-political. It needs to go across, because it's going to be a long-term thing that goes across administrations. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Can I say that everything I've heard today from all sides of the chamber fills me with great gladness. And thank you very much, Councillor Ball, for your contribution. I know that you'll be a tremendous advocate of this. And Councillor Simpson, currently the Deputy Leader of the Labour Group, who is completely behind this as well. So it's really important to me that this is a plan for all of us. That tackling inequalities is something that means a lot to me personally. And when I first raised this a year and a bit ago, I asked officers, can you come up with something? And this is what they've come up with. And there is no better example, in my experience, of being asked by an administration to do something and then coming up with such a fine plan as this. So that part of it's done. It's now very much over to all of you to please be part of this. It's your plan. It's not mine. It's not ours. It's yours. So I hope as many of you can come on the 14th. Is it the 12th or the 14th? 12th. I wanted just to raise that, just to make sure you had it in your diaries. It would be brilliant if you could, because every Councillor Ball, as I was just saying there, it would make a huge difference if everyone could come to this policy conference and play your part. Not to be trained, not to be talked at, but to have a conversation and to join together. So thank you all very much. So I have formally proposed this, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, it's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour, please show. All those against? All those abstaining? That's passed. Thank you very much.
Sorry, may I just say that I haven't answered your question.
Anyway, let's carry on. We've still got plenty of business to get through. So what I will do is I'll go to point 9 on the agenda, report of the interim head of paid service and leader of the council, revised executive management structure. I understand that the report setting out the recommendations of the Staff and Appointments Committee that was held yesterday, which I sit on as well, has been circulated by email to all members. I also understand that hard copies are also available in the chamber. Can I confirm people have had those? Excellent, thank you. So what I will do is I'll go over to the leader and the chair of the, I believe it's called the STAC committee.
Thank you very much. As the chairman of the Staff and Appointments Committee, I put this to you and the recommendations. I'm sorry that you have not had longer time to look at this. The reason for that is that the Staff Appointments Committee was supposed to have been held last week, but for obvious reasons it wasn't. It was held yesterday, which was the first date that we could hold it. Thus, you've only had a short time to look at this. I recommend this because it provides a fresh, new executive structure. And we have already had a tremendous response for our advertisement for a new chief executive and a new full-time monitoring officer. This is the next step in the progress of moving forward. So I hope very much that you will support this, and I propose the recommendations.
And seconding, anyone to second that? Councillor Chicken, you put your hand up to second that. Thank you. Okay, do members have any questions regarding this? Councillor Morford.
Thank you. Just a quick question. It says on page 3 that we've saved £303,000 but hope to save £1 million on senior management structure. So we've still got £697,000 of savings to be made, and it says they'll be found through changes at Tier 3 and beyond. Could you explain what that will involve, please?
The Chief Executive's coming in here.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. Well, the good news is we already do have a little bit of that in the bank, hopefully, so it won't be such a large figure. Tier 2 and Tier 3 are the tiers below the Executive Directors, so it's at 3 and 4 rather, Service Directors and Heads of Service. We will now undertake an exercise, assuming Council agree this structure, to align the structures there in the new structure, and we expect that there will be some posts and some savings made there, and we have already had a few approaches from people at that tier to say they would like to take the opportunity now to realise their ambitions elsewhere. Councillor.
Okay. Councillor Ball, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, this management structure, will devolution have any impact on this going forward at all? Thank you.
Just no.
No.
Okay, is there any further questions? Can't see any, so I think we move into, is there any debate on this? Councillor Reid.
Thanks, Chair. As management structures go, it's management structure. It's the management structure that you want. You're the administration. You're absolutely entitled to have the senior management structure the way you want it. So I shall actually be raising my hand when the time comes.
Okay, Councillor Renner-Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to lend my support to the new structure, in particular the separation of children's services and adult services. Back when we very first started the process of looking at the management structure some years ago, it was one of the first things I said, that I wanted those two services separated. This would mean the new Executive Director for Children, Young People and Education can purely focus on young people, which I think is really important, rather than trying to have probably the two biggest areas of the council combined under one person.
Okay, any more? Councillor Hunter.
Thank you, Chair. I look forward to the new structure coming forward with administration, and the fact that we're going to get permanent staff in to replace interims. Nothing against the interims we've had. We've had some good interims, but we should be having permanent staff to run this council.
Yeah, any more debate? Or any councillors decide to blind me with their torches again? There we are. Okay.
So thank you very much. If I can just sum up by saying thank you very much for that. And I have invited group leaders to participate in the interview process, which I think is reasonably unusual, but I've regretted it already because that'll involve Councillor Reid, but you know, you can't win them all. Anyway, thank you very much.
Okay, right, we've had some debate there. All those in favour? I'm thinking, all those against? Abstentions? No, I think that was unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we'll give me 2 seconds while I get back on script. A bit quicker than I thought it might be. Item 10, report of the Interim Executive Director for Communities, Business Development and Senior HR Manager, voluntary redundancy of the Director of Transformation. As before, under agenda item 9, the report setting out for the recommendations from Staff and Appointments Committees has been circulated to all members and hard copies available in the chamber. Please note there is a pink confidential appendix attached to this report. However, I do not intend to move into private proceedings unless members specifically wish to discuss the contents of the appendix. Now, has everyone got those documents as well? No? Yes. I'm sure they do, because of... Right. Right. So I shall pass over to the leader as the chair of the stack. The leader as the chair of the stack to introduce this.
Yes, of course. I'm actually just going to pass this one over to the interim chief executive. In so doing, I'm going to propose it.
And can someone second it for me, please? Councillor Wearmouth, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is quite a simple report, members. Normally, a voluntary redundancy would be dealt with by stack or by officers, depending on the level. Our pay policy requires that any request for redundancy that exceeds a total package of £100,000, first of all goes to stack and then comes with stack's recommendation to full council. So you have effectively what are 3 reports in front of you. The third page is a report that was dated the 15th of August. This was the original request from the Director of Transformation for voluntary redundancy that was considered by the Staff and Appointments Committee back on the 15th of August. They approved that request subject to the Director of Transformation entering into a settlement agreement. Officers went back and had further discussions with the Director of Transformation, who then agreed to enter into a settlement agreement. That then went to the Staff Appointments Committee yesterday, as the leader has said. The Staff Appointments Committee agreed to stand by that recommendation and to recommend to Council that you agree the package for voluntary redundancy for the Director of Transformation. It's in the papers. It's a total package of £215,000. £145,000 of that is what we call strain on the pension fund. That enables the officer to draw down their pension, and the rest of it is a combination of small redundancy payment of about £23,000, pay in lieu of notice, holiday pay, and a £1,000 payment so the company lease vehicle can go back to the NHS. I'll stop there and actually I would reflect on one point, actually, if I may, Chair. In his report, Mr. Calla referred to the extensive use of non-disclosure agreements by the Council. I just want to assure members that a settlement agreement of this nature is not a non-disclosure agreement. It is absolutely normal employment practice. We're not gagging this officer in any way, shape or form. I thought it important to make that point.
Okay, are there any questions? Sorry, Nick Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. It's good to hear that there isn't a non-disclosure agreement, but is there a non-compete clause? This business has been established, a lot of council money has been spent on it, and anybody working in it presumably would not be allowed to, it may not be, compete may not be the right word because the business may not be continuing, but we should have some sort of clause precluding people from working on an ongoing basis in this business.
The monitoring officer through myself.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Oliver, from what I understand, Ms Johnson is actually an employee of the council, and we wouldn't put such terms in a settlement agreement at all. And also, can I just clarify for the Chamber's purpose, is that a settlement agreement includes a non-disclosure clause, so they're not separate. And we haven't put a non-disclosure clause in this at all, but there will be in the settlement agreement a mutual respect of our confidentiality and also the individuals. But there won't be a non-competing clause or a hairdresser clause, as they used to call them, because she is an employee of the council.
Okay, did Councillor Hill, did you have a question, or was you just indicating Councillor Oliver? Okay, was anyone else with a question? Councillor Bainan.
Thanks, Chair. Two questions, one probably to the Chief Exec and one to probably Councillor Sanson, the leader. And it's not just for me, a lot of residents have asked me this. If somebody asks for voluntary redundancy, why is there such a payment going out, including the pension? One might just be being thick, but quite a few of us are concerned and worried about that. I'm not sure. The other question to Councillor Sanderson, did the administration sanction this appointment?
I'll try to answer the first part of that question, Chair. Voluntary redundancy is, as its name suggests, it's voluntary, and it's offered in a number of circumstances, in a range of circumstances. And often it is an inducement if an organisation may, for instance, want to downsize. So it seems reasonable in those instances, if somebody is giving up their employment rights and we lose the post, that we actually do make a payment. And it's all within our pay policies. I couldn't comment on the second, let you direct to the leader. I'm not aware of that.
No. I'm not either. I think it's fair to say that certainly I haven't been involved in any process. And for an officer on a scale like that, I think there is a process, but I haven't been involved in that, and I wasn't involved in that. Whether there was anybody else involved in that, I don't know. But not I, and not any member of my administration.
Yeah, I think the monitoring officer wishes to come in here, and then I'll bring you in.
Through you, Chair, yes, the leader's correct that at that point, some of the appointment procedure rules were not being carried out, where officers of this level, chief officers, deputy chief officers, that are outlined in our pay policy, would have gone through Staff and Appointments Committee to be appointed, whether they were interim or permanent. Some officers were taken through that process and some weren't. However, once I joined and realised that the pay policy needed to be aligned with our Staff and Appointments Committee, we actually did ratify a lot of the appointments through Staff and Appointments. But that's not to say that Staff and Appointments Committee were involved in that process. However, moving forward, for certain officers of chief officer, deputy chief officers that is in the pay policy that you've sanctioned, they will be. Hence, the leader saying that the appointments of the chief executive, the monitoring officer, and so on, Staff and Appointments Committee will be involved in those.
Councillor Murphy.
Thanks, Chair. Mine's a procedural question. I do feel uncomfortable about talking about individuals, but my question relates to if somebody is too unwell to return to work, wouldn't the normal procedure be either retirement through ill health or capability process rather than redundancy? I'm confused as to why we're going down that route.
Yeah. Yeah.
Through you, Chair, we're quite happy to answer the procedural question, but I do need to, at this point, say to members that it is a fact that the director is off ill, but reasons of illness cannot be discussed in open forum. If you do wish to discuss that, then you do need to move into a closed session. However, I don't think it's relevant. I think this is procedural. Staff and Appointments Committee have approved this. There's a business case that sets it out. The monetary and the terms and conditions are there. The reason why it has come to you is because your pay policy says that over 100k it comes to you. The Chief Executive did lay out the figures and they are in the report as well. So with regard to which option is the best option, this is the best option for the individual concerned and the organisation. It is in the public interest to do this, and it is best value and value for money to go through this route.
Sorry, any further questions? I see none. Do we want a debate on this, or do we want to move straight to a vote? I'm getting an indication of moving straight to a vote. So, all those in favour? Is someone counting up? Or do we need to?
It's not recorded.
That's fine. All those against? All those abstaining? Yeah. I think we're okay with that. Okay, thank you very much for that. That's passed. Thank you very much. I'll then go on to the next item on the agenda, which is to receive the minutes of the Cabinet meeting held on Tuesday the 12th of July, and that's on page 79 to 86 in the agenda. And do we agree? Are we all okay? Do we agree with those? Do I need a proposal on those?
No, they're just...
Okay. We then move on to receive the minutes of the Corporate Services and Economic Growth Overview and Scrutiny. Now, I don't have a chair or vice chair here, so I might move to Councillor Bainan on this one.
Thanks, Chair. I was obviously moving down the food scale a slight bit. I'm delighted to recommend and propose the minutes for the Corporate Service and Economic Growth Overview and Scrutiny for July the 11th, Monday the 11th. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. They agreed. And I'll move over to Councillor Daly for the Family and Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny.
Yeah, Chair, I'd like to move the minutes of the Family and Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee, pages 95 to 100, 7th of July 2022.
Are those agreed? Thank you. Over to Communities and Place Overview and Scrutiny, Councillor Jeff Reid.
Thanks, Chair. I move the minutes of the Communities and Place Overview and Scrutiny Committee held on the 31st of August, pages 101 to 109, 110 is blank.
Okay, Councillor Gallagher has indicated.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to raise a couple of points on page 105, and it's paragraphs number 6. Very much welcome the delivery of the JCB potholing vehicle, but can I put a request to the leader that we actually start training more than one person on new equipment that comes in. That one person that's come in went down with COVID this week, so you know that's a week where that machine could have been doing something, or he could have been getting trained. But also on page 104, the bottom paragraph, where we've taken delivery of 4 new gully vehicles. We had 4 reasonably functional ones there. I just thought that we could have used the 8 gully cleaners to maybe get on top of the backlog, both in the urban and the rural areas. So just making that point, that more people need to be trained for the machinery. Thank you.
Yeah, can I just support Councillor Gallagher on the bottom point because of the gully cleaners? And I probably know, I know all over the place we've got lots of problems with gullies and block gullies. I think certainly in my area and actually in the Tynedale area there's been problems with gullies and block gullies. And I did actually ask the officer exactly how many, what the numbers were and everything else. And in the Tynedale area, it goes from Scottish border to Durham border, to Gateshead border, to Newcastle border, across, etc. And all that time, there's 17,000 gullies, and they are cleaned in a rota every 32 months. Now, that is documented on paper, and I just think we need to have a look to ensure that maybe we can use more gully cleaners where they are needed. But that's something for a bigger picture, and maybe Councillor Reid could ask that we have a look at that specifically.
That's who I was going to bring in now, Councillor Reid.
Yeah, can I just remind everybody that what you're doing is you're deciding whether the minutes are correct. This is not an open invitation to start talking about stuff because it wasn't recorded at the time, and you can't take the clip and you can't put it on your Facebook page, but you can now. You know, are the minutes correct? Yes, they are.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Reid. You've made it in quite a amusing manner, but it's actually a very serious point. This is about minutes. We're not replaying a meeting for our own 5 seconds to be put in it. As much as it might be relevant, as much as it might be important, it's not. It's for, so there we are. Health and Wellbeing Overview and Scrutiny, Councillor Jones.
Thank you. I'd like to move the minutes of the Health and Wellbeing Overview and Scrutiny Committee of the 6th of July, pages 111 to 118.
Are they approved? Okay, agreed. Health and Wellbeing Board, Councillor Patterson.
I'd like to present the minutes of the Health and Wellbeing Board for the 14th of July and the 11th of August, which are pages 119 to 132.
Is that agreed? Okay, thank you. Audit Committee, and I'll go to Vice Chairman Councillor Towns.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to propose these minutes, but as I wasn't at the meeting, I will defer to another member, Councillor Oliver.
Thank you. There's been quite a few of those, and I missed that. So,
thank you, Chair. I'd like to propose the minutes of the Audit Committee on the 27th of July, pages 133 to 142.
Are they agreed? Thank you. Now we'll move to Standards Committee. I, as the Vice Chair of the Standards Committee, approve the minutes on page 143 to present the minutes of the meetings on 143 to 146, but I also add that since that meeting, myself, Joe Jackson, the independent person, and Councillor Dunn have met as a interview panel, and we have appointed 2 of the 3 vacancies for parish and town council representatives. One would be Councillor Varley of Ponteland Town Council, and another will be Councillor Bewley of Amble Town Council, and there'll be an interview for a previous one, and I am reporting back as I was requested to by the Chairman. Thank you very much. And with that, I'm going to close the meeting. Are they agreed? Yeah. It's agreed. It's agreed. Just to remind everyone, those policy conferences, 12th of October is inequalities, 20th of October is cost of living, 21st November climate change, and one in the new year on corporate parenting. Thank you.